The story begins on a quiet evening in Los Angeles. Sandra Bullock was sitting alone in her living room, surrounded by the silence of her home. The lights outside the window flickered as cars passed, but her thoughts were far away. She had just returned from a long day on set, her heart heavy with the weight of endless responsibilities. People admired her as a star, but deep inside, she often felt the same loneliness that any ordinary person feels when the day ends. Sandra kept remembering a small moment earlier that day. During filming, a director had raised his voice at her, accusing her of slowing down the schedule. Though she smiled and nodded, the words stayed inside her like sharp glass. She had always been strong in front of others, but she carried her pain quietly. What she never expected was that Keanu Reeves, her longtime friend, was standing nearby and saw everything. Keanu had always been the kind of man who noticed things others ignored. He noticed the tremble in her hand when she picked up her script. He noticed the way her eyes blinked faster when she was hurt, and he noticed how she forced a smile when she felt small. Keanu did not rush to defend her in front of everyone. Instead, he waited, patient and calm, because he believed real kindness is shown in quiet actions, not in loud scenes. Later, after the set was closed and most people had gone home, Keanu found Sandra sitting on a wooden bench near the parking lot. The night was cold, and she wrapped her arms tightly around herself. Without a word, he walked over and placed his jacket around her shoulders. Sandra looked up, surprised, and for a moment her eyes softened. "I saw how he spoke to you today," Keanu said in his low voice. "You did not deserve that," Sandra tried to laugh it off. "It's part of the job, Keanu. I've been through worse." But her voice cracked slightly. Keanu shook his head slowly. "Being strong doesn't mean you should carry every wound alone. Sometimes respect means standing beside someone quietly so they know they are not invisible." Those words stayed with her. She felt a warmth rising in her chest, not from the jacket, but from the simple truth he spoke. Sandra had been admired for her talent, her beauty, and her fame. But in that moment, she realized what she truly longed for was not applause. It was respect, the kind that sees your heart when the cameras are off. Over the next days, Sandra found herself watching Keanu more closely. She noticed how he treated everyone on set, from the makeup artist to the young assistant carrying water bottles. He never acted bigger than anyone else. He greeted the janitor with the same soft respect he gave to the producer. This humility was rare in Hollywood, and it made her wonder how many times she had overlooked the quiet strength in him. One evening, when they both finished work late, Keanu offered to drive her home. During the ride, the city lights reflected in the car windows, painting a blur of gold and silver. Sandra asked softly, "Keanu, how do you stay so calm when people are unfair? Don't you ever feel like fighting back?" Keanu kept his eyes on the road, but his answer was steady. "Of course I feel it. But anger only takes more from us. I learned long ago that kindness may not change everyone, but it keeps us human. And being human matters more than winning arguments." That night, after she stepped out of the car, Sandra lay awake thinking about his words. She realized Keanu carried something different inside him. It was not about being the strongest man in the room, but about being the gentlest when others expected hardness. Sandra began to feel a shift inside her. She admired his strength, but not the kind the world usually celebrates. It was a strength built from resilience, patience, and compassion. And as she thought of him, she whispered to herself, "Maybe that is the kind of strength I want too." The days moved forward, but Sandra found herself drawn closer to Keanu. She admired the way he listened before speaking, how he gave space for others to share their truth. She admired his humility, the way he never mentioned his fame, never used his power to overshadow anyone. And deep inside, a question started to rise in her heart. Was she beginning to see Keanu not just as a friend, but as something more? The suspense of that question hung in her thoughts like a quiet flame. She could not answer it yet. But every time she looked at him, she felt a deep respect that grew stronger. Little did she know, the story of their bond was only beginning, and it would take her on a journey filled with kindness, resilience, and unexpected turns that would change both their lives. The days that followed brought Sandra and Keanu into moments she never thought would matter so much. One evening, after another long shoot, Sandra sat quietly in her car, staring at the steering wheel. Her mind was heavy with the memory of a scene where she was pushed to repeat the same line 20 times. Not because she was wrong, but because the director seemed to enjoy reminding her of her flaws. She held her breath as tears threatened to spill, when suddenly there was a soft knock on her car window. It was Keanu. He leaned down, his face gentle, his voice calm. "You forgot your script on the set. I thought you might need it." But in his eyes, she could see he was not just there for the script. He was there for her. She unlocked the door, and Keanu slipped into the passenger seat without asking. He didn't need an invitation. His presence itself felt like an answer. For a while, neither of them spoke. Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that makes you feel less alone. After a few minutes, Keanu broke it. "You know, Sandra, sometimes people treat others harshly because they are fighting battles of their own. But that doesn't mean their words are truth. You are more than their criticism." Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. "You always say things that sound so simple, but they feel like medicine. Do you even know what that does to someone like me?" Keanu looked at her, and a faint smile touched his lips. "I only say what I wish someone had told me in my hardest moments." "We all need reminders." His honesty touched her deeply. She realized then that he carried stories of pain and resilience hidden behind his calm face. She wanted to know more, but she respected the quiet walls he kept around his past. The next day, during lunch break on set, Sandra saw something that stayed with her. A young assistant accidentally dropped a tray of drinks, spilling them across the floor. The director shouted. The crew members sighed, but Keanu walked over calmly, crouched down, and began helping the assistant clean. His hands moved with ease, no hesitation, no pride. Sandra watched, her chest tightening. Here was a man admired by millions, yet he bent down to pick up paper towels for a nervous worker who thought her mistake ruined everything. When the girl whispered, "Thank you," Keanu only smiled and said, "Don't worry, mistakes are proof that we are trying." Sandra couldn't take her eyes off him. Admiration was growing into something she couldn't deny. It wasn't the admiration of a fan for a star. It was deeper, heavier, and softer all at once. It was admiration for his humanity. Later that evening, Sandra invited him to her house for dinner. She cooked something simple, pasta with vegetables, and worried if it was too plain for someone like him. But Keanu sat at her table with such ease, complimenting every detail as though she had served him a 5-star meal. Between bites, Sandra asked softly, "Keanu, how do you stay this humble in a world that tries to change everyone?" He placed his fork down and looked straight at her. "I remind myself every day that fame is not ownership of people's hearts. Respect is earned in small moments when no one is watching. If I ever forget that, then I lose the only thing that matters." Her breath caught. She had heard countless people talk about success, power, or winning awards. But hearing him speak of humility as though it was more precious than gold stirred something inside her that words could not explain. As the night went on, they laughed. They shared stories, and for the first time in weeks, Sandra felt light again. But when Keanu was about to leave, something unexpected happened. As he reached the door, Sandra stopped him with a question that came straight from her heart. "Keanu, do you ever feel lonely, even when people love you?" He paused, his hand on the doorknob, and then turned back. His eyes softened, and for the first time, she saw a shadow of pain in them. "Yes, more often than anyone would believe. But loneliness has taught me something important. It makes us appreciate every true connection we are given. And tonight, Sandra, I don't feel lonely." Her chest tightened at his words, her heart pounding louder than she wanted to admit. She watched him step into the night, but even after he was gone, his voice lingered like a promise. In the quiet of her living room, Sandra whispered to herself, "He doesn't even know how much I admire him." What neither of them realized was that these simple evenings, these soft confessions, were only the beginning of a journey filled with deeper trials, unexpected conflicts, and shocking revelations. Their bond was about to be tested in ways neither of them could predict, and the choices they made would not only reveal their strength, but also redefine the meaning of respect and kindness in both their lives. A few days later, Sandra walked onto the set with her usual calm smile, but inside she felt shaken. The director had been harsher than ever, barking orders, dismissing her suggestions, and treating her like a beginner instead of an actress with years of success. She kept her head high, but her spirit was quietly breaking. During one scene, she delivered her lines with her whole heart. Yet the director cut her off mid-sentence, laughing as if her effort meant nothing. For a moment, Sandra froze. The cameras were rolling, the crew was watching, and her pride felt torn apart. She tried to steady her voice, but her chest felt heavy. She glanced to the side, and there stood Keanu, leaning against a wall, his eyes fixed on her with quiet intensity. He didn't say a word, but she could feel his silent support like a shield protecting her from the storm. Later, when the scene ended, Sandra walked off set quickly, pretending she had to fix her makeup. She hid in a quiet hallway, gripping her script so tightly the pages bent. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching. She knew who it was before she even looked up. Keanu stopped in front of her, his voice soft but firm. "Sandra, don't let him take away your light. I've seen you bring life into roles no one else could touch. What happened out there wasn't about you. It was about his own frustrations," she whispered back, her voice trembling. "But it still hurts, Keanu. Every word he says makes me doubt myself." Keanu's eyes didn't waver. "You're human. You're allowed to feel hurt. But don't mistake cruelty for truth. Sometimes the people who shout the loudest are the ones who are most afraid of being unseen. Don't let their fear plant seeds in your soul." Those words hit her deeper than she expected. She wanted to believe him, but the pain lingered. She shook her head slowly. "Why do you always know what to say? How do you stay so steady when everything feels so heavy?" He sighed, his expression distant, as though remembering something from long ago. "Because I've carried losses that taught me the weight of silence. When you've stood at the edge of despair, you learn that kindness is the only thing that keeps you from falling." For the first time, Sandra sensed that behind his calm strength was a history filled with shadows. She wanted to ask more, but the look in his eyes told her he wasn't ready to share. So instead, she simply nodded, silently promising herself that one day she would understand the depth of his resilience. That evening, something unexpected happened. One of the crew members had an accident with the lighting equipment. The heavy frame slipped, nearly striking a young worker. Chaos erupted as people shouted and scrambled. In the middle of the confusion, it was Keanu who moved first. He rushed forward, steadying the frame with his bare hands, his body straining under the weight until others came to help. Everyone stood stunned. No cameras were filming, no reporters were watching. Yet Keanu put himself at risk for someone whose name most people on set didn't even know. When the worker tried to apologize through tears, Keanu simply said, "You're safe. That's what matters." And then he walked away quietly, refusing any attention. Sandra watched from a distance, her heart thundering. Admiration no longer felt like the right word for what she felt. It was deeper, heavier, almost overwhelming. She realized that her respect for him was turning into something that scared her. Not because it was wrong, but because it was real. That night, when she returned home, Sandra couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment when Keanu held the equipment with such raw courage, and then the way he dismissed it as nothing. She whispered to herself in the dark, "Why does he always hide his strength as if it doesn't matter?" The next morning, Sandra made a quiet decision. She would no longer just admire him from a distance. She wanted to understand the man behind the calm voice, the one who carried pain with grace and gave kindness like it was air. So after filming ended that day, she walked straight up to him, her voice steady though her heart raced. "Keanu, come with me. I want to show you something." He raised an eyebrow but followed without question. She drove them to a small park outside the city, a place where she used to go when the weight of Hollywood became too much. The park was quiet, with an old wooden bench under a tree and a pond that reflected the fading sunlight. They sat down, the silence between them soft and unhurried. Sandra finally spoke. "This is where I come when I need to remember who I am. No lights, no cameras, no expectations, just me. I wanted you to see it because I think you carry places like this inside you all the time, and I don't know how you do it." Keanu looked at the pond for a long time before answering. "I carry peace because I've seen chaos. I choose kindness because I know what cruelty feels like. And I stay humble because I've learned that everything we hold can disappear in a moment. His words sent chills through her. She turned to him, searching his face. Keanu, why do I feel like you're always giving but never letting anyone carry your pain? He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw them glisten with unspoken sorrow, because some burdens don't feel fair to share. But maybe it's time I stop carrying them alone. Sandra's breath caught. She didn't know what he would reveal, but she knew in that moment their bond was stepping into a deeper place, a place where truths could no longer be hidden. The suspense hung in the air like a secret waiting to break open, and as the last light of day faded behind them, Sandra realized that whatever he was about to share could change everything between them. The soft evening air wrapped around them as they sat on the old park bench. Sandra's heart beat faster, not because of the silence, but because of what she sensed in Keanu's eyes. It was as if he stood at the edge of a cliff, ready to share something he had guarded for years. She leaned closer, her voice trembling slightly. Keanu, you don't have to tell me anything if it hurts too much. But if you do, I promise I'll listen. He drew in a long breath, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on the water. Sandra, people see the calm in me, but they don't see where it comes from. They see the smile, but they don't see the battles behind it. Her chest tightened as she waited. Keanu continued, his voice quiet but heavy. I have lost people I loved. I have stood in rooms where laughter should have been, and instead, there was silence. I have learned to walk forward with those shadows because the only way to honor love is to keep living with kindness. Sandra's eyes filled with tears. She had known him for years, admired him, worked with him. But this was the first time he peeled back the layers of his soul. She wanted to reach for his hand, but she hesitated, not wanting to break the moment. And so, Keanu added softly, when I see cruelty, when I see disrespect, it cuts deeper than most people realize. Because I know life is already fragile, already heavy. No one deserves to carry extra pain, Sandra whispered. That's why you protect people, even strangers. He nodded slowly. Because maybe if I ease someone's pain, even for a moment, the world becomes lighter for all of us. Her heart swelled with both sorrow and admiration. She realized that behind his calm strength was not only resilience, but scars carved by grief and loneliness. Just then, the wind rustled through the trees, and Sandra felt something stir inside her. She wanted to comfort him, to let him know he wasn't alone. Keanu, she said softly, you don't have to carry that burden alone anymore. Not when I'm here. He turned to her, his eyes holding a mix of gratitude and hesitation. Sandra, I don't want pity. She shook her head quickly. It's not pity. It's respect. It's admiration. And maybe it's something even more than that. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt electric, alive with the weight of emotions unspoken. Before they could say more, the sharp ring of Sandra's phone broke the moment. She sighed, pulling it out reluctantly. It was the director calling. She almost ignored it, but curiosity pushed her to answer. His voice came through harsh and cold. Sandra, I don't care what time it is. Tomorrow, I need you to redo every single scene from this week. You've been slowing us down, and the studio is breathing down my neck. Sandra's face paled. But he cut her off. No excuses. If you can't handle it, maybe we should think about someone else for this role. And then he hung up. Her hand trembled as she lowered the phone. He wants me to redo everything. Keanu, I don't know if I can take it anymore. Keanu's jaw tightened, his calm cracking just slightly. He has no right to treat you like this. She shook her head, her voice breaking. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am failing. Keanu leaned forward, his eyes burning with quiet intensity. Listen to me, Sandra. You are not failing. He is breaking you down because he knows your worth threatens him. Don't let him steal your truth. Her tears fell then, not from weakness, but from the release of holding everything in for too long. She covered her face with her hands, and Keanu gently reached out, placing his hand over hers. His touch was steady, grounding her. You're stronger than you think, he whispered. and I will stand with you no matter what comes tomorrow." His words were like fire in the cold, a warmth that spread through her chest. In that moment, Sandra knew she was not alone in this fight. The next day arrived heavy with tension. When Sandra walked onto the set, whispers followed her. The director stood in the center, arms crossed, ready to humiliate her again. But this time, Keanu walked beside her. His calm presence was like a shield, and when the director sneered, Keanu's quiet stare silenced him more than any argument could. But then something unexpected happened. A producer stepped onto the set, carrying a folder of reports. He glanced at the director, then at Sandra, and said, "We've been reviewing the footage. Sandra's performance is powerful. The problem isn't her. It's your constant interruptions." The room fell silent. The director's face turned red with anger. Sandra froze, shocked by the sudden defense. And then, almost instinctively, she turned to Keanu. His lips curved into the faintest smile, as though he had known this truth would eventually come to light. For the first time in weeks, Sandra felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, validation. And yet, as relief washed over her, she couldn't shake the question rising in her chest. How much of this quiet victory had been Keanu's doing? Had he spoken to someone behind the scenes? Had he protected her without saying a word? The suspense grew heavier. She realized there was still so much about Keanu that she didn't know. And deep inside, she feared that the more she uncovered, the more her heart would no longer just admire him, it would fall for him completely. The days after the producer's words brought a strange calm to the set. For the first time in weeks, Sandra felt seen, her work respected. She smiled more, laughed softly with crew members, and even carried herself with a little more confidence. Yet deep down, she knew this calm was fragile. In Hollywood, peace never lasted long. Keanu stayed close, but always at a distance that gave her space. It was his way, never suffocating, never demanding, just present. She admired that more than she could admit. But one night, everything shifted. Sandra received an anonymous message on her phone. The words were short, but they cut like a blade. "He isn't what you think. He hides truths that will ruin you if you stay close." Her hands trembled as she read it again and again. No name, no explanation. Just a shadow of doubt planted deep in her mind. The next day on set, she couldn't stop looking at Keanu differently. Every smile, every kind word, every quiet gesture. It all felt suddenly mysterious, like pieces of a puzzle she had never thought to question. During lunch, she finally asked him directly, "Keanu, has someone been talking to the producers about me?" His gaze was steady, unreadable for a moment. Then he said softly, "I only told the truth about what I saw." "That you were being treated unfairly." Her chest tightened. "So you did speak to them?" He nodded. "I couldn't stand by and watch them tear you down." She looked at him, torn between gratitude and unease. "But why didn't you tell me?" Keanu's jaw tensed slightly. "Because sometimes the truth feels heavier when we know where it comes from. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. I wanted you to stand on your own strength." His words made sense, yet the seed of doubt from the message grew. What else was he not telling her? That evening, Sandra was leaving the studio when she overheard two crew members whispering near the exit. "Did you hear? Keanu had a meeting with the studio heads last month. Some say he's pulling strings behind the scenes." "Yeah, and not just for Sandra. Apparently he's been protecting others too, quietly. Makes you wonder what his real motives are." Her steps faltered. She drove home, her thoughts spiraling. What if the anonymous message was right? What if Keanu's kindness was not as simple as it seemed? The conflict inside her grew. She admired him, respected him, maybe even loved him. But trust is fragile, and now hers was being tested. The next day, she decided to confront him honestly. They met at the same park bench where he had once opened his heart. The pond reflected the fading sunlight again, but now the air felt heavier. "Keanu," she began, her voice tight, "someone sent me a message about you. They said you're hiding things from me, that being close to you will only hurt me." He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back, his expression calm but shadowed. "And do you believe them?" Sandra hesitated. "I don't want to, but I can't ignore it." "Are you hiding something from me?" Keanu's silence stretched, long and unsettling. Then he spoke. "Yes, I am." Her heart dropped. "What do you mean?" He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, she saw fear in his. Sandra, my life has always been filled with loss and battles the world doesn't see. I've tried to protect people by carrying it alone, but sometimes protecting others means hiding truths that could hurt them. I never wanted those shadows to fall on you. Her voice cracked. So you're saying I don't know the real you? You know my heart, he said firmly. But you don't know all my scars. She looked away, fighting the tears that threatened. How can I admire someone if I don't know the whole truth? He leaned forward, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. Because admiration doesn't come from perfection. It comes from seeing the light in someone despite the darkness. His words pierced her, but the doubt remained. She stood up, her body trembling. Keanu, I don't know if I can walk forward with half-truths between us. His eyes followed her as she turned away, his voice carrying softly across the evening air. Then give me the chance to show you everything. Even the parts that hurt. Sandra stopped, her heart torn in two. Part of her wanted to run to escape the confusion, but another part wanted to stay, to finally see the man behind every shadow, every silence, every scar. The suspense gripped her chest. What would she choose? And what truths was Keanu holding back that could change everything between them? The night after their conversation at the park, Sandra couldn't sleep. She walked through her house in silence, replaying Keanu's words again and again. Then give me the chance to show you everything. Even the parts that hurt. Those words echoed like a drumbeat inside her. Part of her wanted to protect her heart from disappointment. But another part, the stronger part, knew she couldn't walk away without knowing the truth. The next morning, she called him. Her voice shook, but she didn't hide it. Keanu, if you're ready to show me everything, then I'm ready to listen. He arrived at her house that evening, dressed simply as he always did. There was no aura of Hollywood, no mask of fame, just a man carrying something heavy inside him. They sat in her living room, the quiet between them filled with tension. Finally, Keanu began. Sandra, the truth is, I've spent years helping people behind the scenes. Not just you, not just the crew. I've paid medical bills for strangers, supported young artists in silence, even funded projects without attaching my name. I didn't want anyone to know because I believe kindness loses its purity when it's done for recognition. Sandra's eyes widened. So all those whispers, all those rumors? He nodded slowly. They were true, but not in the way people think. I wasn't pulling strings to control anyone. I was trying to shield people from pain, the way I wish someone had shielded me when I was younger. She leaned closer, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. But why hide it from me? His voice trembled, though it was still steady. Because the world already admires me for what they think I am. I didn't want you to admire me for something I was doing in secret. I wanted your respect for who I am when all the lights are off. And if I lost that, I couldn't bear it. Sandra's chest ached. She realized then that his silence, his secrets, weren't about deception. They were about humility. Keanu wasn't hiding darkness. He was hiding light, afraid it would blind the truth of who he really was. Her tears fell freely now. Keanu, do you know how rare it is for someone in this world to care more about kindness than applause? Do you know how much that makes me admire you even more? He looked at her, surprised, his usually calm eyes shimmering. Admire me? She nodded, her voice breaking. Yes, I can't stop admiring you. Not for your fame, not for your roles, but for the way you carry scars with grace and give kindness without expecting anything back. That's the real you, and that's the man I see. For the first time, his composure faltered. Keanu lowered his head, and when he looked up again, his eyes were wet. He whispered, Thank you, Sandra. You don't know what it means to finally be seen. She reached out, taking his hand gently in hers. The silence that followed was no longer heavy. It was warm, like a promise unspoken. In the days that followed, their bond grew deeper. Sandra walked onto set with new strength, not because the director changed, but because she knew Keanu stood beside her, silently reminding her of her worth. Whispers still circled, rumors still spread, but none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was the truth they now shared. The world saw them as stars, but they saw each other as humans, flawed, scarred, resilient, and kind. And as the sun set one evening, the two of them sat side by side, their hands resting close but not forced, the air between them calm and honest. Sandra smiled softly and whispered, "Sometimes the shocking thing isn't what the world says about us. It's realizing that true respect, true admiration, was right here all along." Keanu squeezed her hand gently, his voice calm and certain. "And it will stay here for as long as we both keep choosing kindness." Their story wasn't about fame or power or cameras. It was about two souls finding strength in each other, proving that even in a world of lights and applause, the quietest acts of humility and kindness shine the brightest.